In this exploration, I'll be exploring the nexus between love and life in a variety of ways, and suggesting ultimately what is somewhat of a cliche, but is not mechanically or structurally understood, that love and life are inextricable, and that one part of life is inextricably connected to every other part of life, thus suggesting that in order to fully love one thing, one must love everything. So the first thing that I want to start with is the possibility field. And so let's think of the Big Bang and the inception of our concept of the universe as kind of the first possibility field, or at least the most relevant one to us. And so the Big Bang starts at a little point. There's a little dot of energy that's less than the size of a pea, and very rapidly expands out in all directions. And the longer it expands, the more time there is. And the more it expands, the more space there is. And the more time there is, and the more space there is, the more distinctions are born. So, and the more complexity emerges out of those distinctions. So if you think of, the first gases forming, they have sex with one another over time. Meaning over time, what was once one very hot, very small energy cools and becomes crystalline or differentiates, right? As different parts cool faster than others, there's a spectrum of energy that we can name different things. This is a different temperature, and at this temperature, this substance is this gas. At this temperature, it's this gas. Well, now that you have, for example, gases of two different frequencies, they come together. In some instances, there's a synergy. A third energy, a third pattern emerges that is distinct from the first two. And this is analogous to having a child. A third pattern of energy that is distinct from the parents. And the more children there are, right, the more sex is possible, the more combination is possible of different distinct patterns of energy, and the more distinct offspring, the more third energies that are possible, and the more third energies, the more sex and variation is possible. And this is basically how the universe has been expanding moment after moment since the beginning of time. Every single moment that the universe has been in existence, it has gotten bigger spatially. And as it does, it gets longer on the time continuum, right? If you think of how many seconds have existed in the universe since the beginning of the Big Bang, every single second that the universe exists, there is another second of time in existence. So time, the units of time, become bigger and bigger as time goes on, as the universe expands. So time is getting bigger, and space is getting bigger. And as time and space gets bigger, there is more and more complexity. Because there are more and more distinct patterns of energy. that emerge as time and space unfold. And as more and more distinct patterns of energy are formed and emerge, the possibility field and the probability field of the universe expands. So if you have 5 fingers, you have a 25 possibility field, because there's 5 different ways that the 5 fingers can relate to each other. Like this finger could relate to itself. It could also relate to this finger. It could relate to this finger. It could relate to that finger. It could relate to that finger. Now, this finger could relate to itself. It could relate to this. It could relate to there. So when you add 1 unit to reality, you don't just expand the possibility field by 1 unit, right? As you go from 5 fingers that have a 25-point possibility field, 5 times 5, as you go to 6, if you add a 6th finger into this dynamic, it's not just 26, right? It's not 5 times 5 equals 25 plus 1, which is 6, and it's not 26. It's 6 times 6, which is now 36. So as the universe gets bigger and longer, there are more and more distinct patterns of energy. And as each unit of energy is added, the possibility field goes up exponentially, right? Because when you have 2, 2 times 2 is 4, right? 1 plus 1 is 2, but 2 times 2 is 4. You've added 2 points. As you add the second unit from 1 to 2, you get a possibility field of 4. 2 times 2. So you're getting 2 units for the second unit. For the third, for 1 more unit, you're getting 3. 2 plus 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. For the third, you're going to 9. So you're getting 5 more units on the possibility field. But as you're going from 5 to 6, you're going from 5 times 5 is 25 to 6 times 6 is 36. Right? 36 minus 25 is 11 units. So, in other words, as the universe gets bigger, the possibility field is not just going up linearly for each unit of distinct energy that is added. It's going up exponentially to the point where if we bring 1 new unit of energy into existence, a single child, a single finger, a rock, if a new entity, a new pattern of energy forms, whatever it is, it now has a possibility field that is related to every single thing in the past, present, and future in the entire universe. So 1 new addition to the universe, and of course there are trillions of new additions every single day, but just one new addition to the universe increases the universe's possibility field by trillions, not just 1. Because that rock could have a variety of relationships with every human being, right? That rock could kill any one of all of the human beings alive today. That rock could kill any number of animals. That rock could tip the scale that starts a stream flowing to this side of the mountain rather than to the other side. Right? That rock could be used to build a tool. It could be used to write a book. And you can imagine how big the possibility field is when you sat down with a blank piece of tablet to scratch out, a text of some kind. Right? There are infinite varieties. There are infinite things that one could write, having turned the rock into a writing device. So the single addition of a single rock to any point in the universe is increasing the possibility field in the universe. Trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of units. Because there are trillions and trillions and trillions of ways that rock can relate, that it is possible for that rock to relate to everything else. So if we understand that the possibility field has to exist before the probability field exists, right? Does that make sense? That in order for something to be likely, it has to be possible, right? So the possibility field is the biggest, and it is always circular. Meaning if it can get hotter, it can also get colder. If you can go higher, you can also go lower, right? It is circular. And eventually it circles around, like if you went lower and drilled right through the center of the Earth, you eventually come out the other side and then you get higher. So lower gets higher. Similarly, whenever you head out in a curved space-time, if you head out in exactly a straight direction, you eventually loop round because time-space is curved. Much of reality is curved, is spherical, and so ultimately the one becomes the other. So when the possibility field stretches out in all directions equally, right? And it's also important to understand the connection of polarity, meaning it is impossible for it to get colder if it is impossible for it to get hotter. Right? So for all possibility goes in both directions. If it's possible for things to get better, it must be possible for things to get worse. Right? There is an inextricable connection between positive and negative, between right and left, between up and down, between black and white. Now, if there is an inextricable connection between polarities, right, if you cannot even be aware of what white is without the contrast to black, then they are one and the same. Meaning if one cannot exist without the other, they are one and the same. You think of a man and you say, oh, that's separate from a woman. But if every man has emerged from a woman's womb, you cannot say that the man is separate from a woman, because if you delete the mother, the man does not exist. If the child is inextricably linked to a parent, no parent, no child, then you cannot say that the child is separate from the parent. If its entire existence is resting on the foundation of the existence of something else, is it really something else? Like I can say that this finger is separate from my body. But if I cut the finger off and the finger withers rapidly, can I really say that the finger is separate from the body? If it is no longer a finger as soon as it is separate. Yeah. So there's a very close relationship, right? You can think of hot and cold. Could something be hotter if it couldn't be colder? Could you walk forward if you couldn't walk backwards? And I think it's very clear that you cannot have any pole in a polarity independent of the other pole. No matter what the polarity is, if it's a true polarity, it is formed by the one, the whole, being divided with language in half. Now, it's not a true polarity if it looks like this. That's not a true polarity. A true polarity is 1 divided by 2 equals 2 equal halves. So any real polarity will create 2 equal halves, which, when reassembled, will create a whole. Now, the whole is the reality. The polarity is an illusion created by language. Right? In other words, I can draw this line, and I can create this line in my mind, but it is an illusion, meaning you can't really cut the world in half and have it be 2 completely different halves. As soon as you cut the one into 2, right, it's no longer functioning as the one. But also, you need both parts to reassemble the whole, to create the synergy that is inextricably connected to life. You can't take half of life, half of the Big Bang, for example, and have the other one keep evolving and just fizzle out the other one on the left, right? You just can't do that. It goes out in all directions. It gets hotter and colder simultaneously. It goes to the right and the left simultaneously. The universe expands to the north and the south simultaneously. So, duality, distinctions, are an illusion created by language. The possibility field, which starts at the center, whether you imagine the Big Bang or the present moment, is also the center. The possibility field is going out in all directions equally. From the present moment, the possibility field stretches out equally in all directions. Now, if we delete, in order to delete one portion of the possibility field, we also have to delete all the other portions, right? You can kind of think of a swinging ball, right? If you add a foot to the swinging ball swings out a foot further out in all directions if you swing that above your head, right? If you pull the string in so it swings less, it swings in a narrower radius in all directions. So the possibility field, if you do something to shrink the possibility field, shrinks in all directions simultaneously, not just in one direction, right? Which means that if we reduce the possibility field of life, we are reducing it in all directions. So one of the favorite overlays of any cult, of any culture, of any ego, is the idea of good and evil. And you can think of this in, let's take cash, for example. If cash exists, which it does, the cash can be used to do good things and bad things, right? Because first of all, there will be as many good things as there will be bad things. There will be as many bad things as there are good things, because good and bad are a true polarity, right? So whatever you decide is good, however you define that, there will be as much good as there is evil, not in any situation in particular. There may be more or less, but in the possibility field. So with the birth of cash, cash creates a possibility field. You can now buy any of the things that you can buy. Well, you can buy landmines and you can install them and you can blow up children's feet, which most people would say that's bad. You can also buy medical supplies and help the wounded and the sick, which most people would say is good. Right? But if you save someone's life, they are going to keep living. And if you pay attention to the details of their life, they're going to do some things that you think are good and some things that you think are bad. So you can't just save a life and only have good things happen. Right? If you get rid of the Catholic Church, you get rid of the 5% of priests that are pedophiles, but you also get rid of the 5% of Catholic priests that are going above and beyond to, exceptionally help their congregation. Or, in a more nuanced sense, when the 5% of Catholic priests who are pedophiles are not, getting their dicks sucked, right? They're doing other things that leave at least some people allowing them to be priests, right? So maybe they, pass soup out at the soup kitchen on the Saturday and suck dick on a Sunday, right? So if you get rid of that priest, you get rid of the dick sucking and you get rid of the soup disbursement or whatever it is that would be considered on the other side. So there's, when you kill someone or deny research or don't allow something to exist, whatever portion of that you would consider good doesn't exist, and whatever portion is bad doesn't exist, and vice versa, right? When you give birth to something, you give birth to a child, if you give birth to a tiger, whatever it is, there will be some things you say that's good, and there will be some things that's bad. Like, say, save the tigers, right? You put a camera and you watch the tiger and you see the trauma of some villager who saw the tiger and you realized, okay, one more person has PTSD because I saved that tiger. And you look at the damage to the cow herd, some neighboring farm, and you say, well, okay, well, there's 3 less cows because of that tiger. Right? And then you look at some other thing, right? Well, there's 3 less cows, and so there's less something else, right? The grass is able to grow, right? So there's a balance. You can't objectively say that it's all good or it's all bad about anything, right? Because there's also ripple effects, right? Because you can say, okay, this, you might say, for example, this is a 100% good person, right? Takes a little bit of myopia and blind spots to say that, but this is a 100% good person. And they're a 100% good parent, but they gave birth to someone else who gave birth to someone else. And then you might say of one of those grandchildren, that is a 100% horrible, evil person that wouldn't have existed without the 100% good person being around, right? And if you think of the intergenerational tree, starting out up here and kind of going all the way down the line for, millions of generations from, whatever source of, human genetics to the present time, somewhere in each of our in our ancestry, there are people that we would say applaud, say that's an amazing person, a great person, and somewhere in our ancestry after that was someone we would say that is a horrific person, and then somewhere in our ancestry after that we would say there's a great person, right? But the horrible person couldn't exist without the great person, and the great person couldn't exist without the horrible person, right? If our great-great-great-great-grandfather on our father's side was a pirate that looted and pillaged and raped and did this and all these politically incorrect things, and amongst all the raping they did, right, they inseminated, hundreds of women, and then one of them was your great-great-great-grandparent. But they were an amazing person, right? But they came from rape and piracy. Or there was an amazing person back in the 15th century who did this and did that, but one of their great-great-grandchildren, worshipped Satan and went around, terrorizing people and playing heavy metal music and whatever they did, right? And so there's a connection, right? And then their great-grandchildren was a saint again, right? And so in that line, it's a little bit tricky to say, okay, well, let's get rid of the satanic worshiper, and then there's no saints in the bloodline after that. Or let's let's blame the saint 1,000 years ago for not instructing their grandchildren on how to not give birth to a satanic worshiper, right? So it's a shaky thing on a genetic level to try and go back and change all the bad things and still have the good things happen, which is one of the reasons it's important to understand that they are related to one another, that every single thing that would be considered good has been born out of something else at some point that would be considered bad. Right? If you're a human being and the sun goes supernova or it gets too hot and this, then that's bad, right? But if you're a fire being of some kind with a consciousness that survives in fire and then the earth cools down to a point that supports a green surface, well, that's terrible, right? Your whole species is going extinct, and then something else is being born out of that. Now, that's the possibility field. The probability field is much, much smaller than the possibility field. So maybe of all the different things that you could do, right, you could take a rock, form it into a pen, and go and engrave the street. But is that likely? Is that really your personality? Nah, I've never done that. I have no interest in engraving the street with rocks. That's not probable, right? And how about anyone else in your family? Do they do secret rock engraving at night on city streets? No. Very, very improbable, right? So it's possible, but the probability is always much, much smaller than the possibility. However, could the probability field exist without the possibility field? Meaning, could something be probable that was impossible? Of course not, right? So in order for us to have freedom to create a much smaller probability field, within the possibility field. The possibility field must exist. And the more big the possibility field, the more meaningful is the probability field. Because if you think about it, think about the continuum of meaning. Right? So up here you have peak meaning. Down here you have meaninglessness. Well, powerlessness and meaninglessness are corollaries. So one of the biggest sources of meaninglessness is I have no ability to change my life. I can't do anything right. I can't win. I can't get ahead. It's meaningless to get out of bed, right? Because I'm powerless. I have no choice is another form of powerlessness. If I have no ability to choose, then what's the meaning of my choice? Zero. Meaning I'm chained to a rock. I can't move. I can't eat. I can't help anyone. I can't hurt anyone. I'm chained. I'm pinned to a rock. I'm gagged. Can't move any part of my body. I'm chained and pinned to a rock. Well, how meaningful is it to decide, today I'm going to go help people in the neighborhood? Well, it's an interesting thought, but it doesn't have a lot of meaning if you're just pinned to a rock year after year until you die. Right? In other words, in order for life to have meaning, there has to be choice. There has to be meaningful choice, choices that improve quality of life and choices that destroy quality of life. There must be meaning for there to be choice. There must be choice for there to be meaning. So the bigger the possibility field, the more meaningful the probability field, right? Because if I could kill you at a moment's notice, then it is meaningful that I have not chosen to do so. But if I can't possibly kill anyone, it's not meaningful that I haven't. Right? If I could keep all of my money, but I choose to give it away, that's meaningful. If I cannot keep any of my money, I'm at gunpoint, this and that, so I say, okay, fine, I'm at gunpoint, I'll give away my money. That's not as meaningful, right? So the more choice we have, the more meaningful the choices are. The bigger the possibility field, the more meaningful is the probability field. That's where we choose to locate ourselves on the within the possibility field. It's a much stronger arena. If you delete the possibility field, make it smaller, meaning becomes smaller, and the probability field becomes smaller. So what this is suggesting is that it is good, that it is possible to do bad things, that it is possible to be bad things, as long as you have language that calls this good and this bad. Now, within the probability field, there is the actual, which is vastly smaller than the probable. I could get up and go for a run, but I'm not going to. I could stop this recording right now, or now, or now, or any number of an infinite number of moments. I'm just not going to do that, right? I'm going to continue on. So the actuality is infinitesimal relative to what's probable. What's probable is infinitesimal relative to what's possible. Where we are right now in this actuality is resting on the foundation of what's probable, which is resting on the foundation of what's possible. Now, I'd also like to suggest that there's a connection between this moment in time and all of the other moments in time. And there's a couple of connections. If we remember the Big Bang, starting at the center, right? At that moment, the entire universe was 1 second old. So 1 second, meaning that the entire relationship of all the possibility field that would unfold in the universe, they were all 1 centimeter apart and 1 second apart, right? So it was a very, very tight area. Now, every single thing that exists today and every moment that is existing right now links back to that moment, right? Because that's a wave of possibility that's getting, it's like a tree with rings, right? The universe of time-space is getting bigger in every moment, but the moment links back to the past in the same way that you can think of a tree developing a new set of rings every single year. But the outer part of the tree is inextricably linked with the core, with the inner part of the tree. This moment in time is inextricably linked to the Big Bang, which is inextricably linked to every other moment of time. This moment of space was once compressed into less than the size of a pea, right, during the Big Bang. And this moment of space is linked through time and space. Like if you follow the space from here, you can get all the way to the edge of the universe over here and all the way to the edge of the universe over here. You can connect, like there's no area of space that is inextricably disconnected or that is disconnected from any other area of space. Every single unit of space is connected, like this space. You could move along here and get over to this space here. Or you could move over here and get over to this space here. You could take 1 trillion different ways to go from here over to here, right? But you can get there. You can get from any point in space to any other point in space through space. Right? There's no space where there's just kind of this invisible wall and this is not connected to this thing. There might be a wall, and then the wall is connected to this space. And then this space is connected to the other side of the wall. Right? It's all linked. It's all linked through time. It's all linked through space. Next thing. We've invented a number system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then we repeat. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. We repeat. Right? So we have a 10-point number system. Now let's say we try and delete the 3 in the number system. Can the other numbers function as they would? Can you go 1, 2, blank, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Well, first of all, there's no blank, so if you really delete the 3, it just becomes a 9-point number system, which means you go up to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the entire number system from that point is different. And the equations, are different. The multiplications are different in a 9-point number system. The adding and subtracting is different. Calculus is different. It's different in a 9-point number system. So you can't delete the 3 without changing the entire number system. Now, equally, you can't delete you from the possibility system, from the human number system, without changing all of humanity. If you were to create a reality where it was impossible and improbable that you existed, the entirety of humanity could not exist, because the same rules that would make it impossible for you to exist would make it impossible for the rest of humanity to exist in its current form. So you are part of the possibility field, you're part of the probability field, and you're part of the actual field. If it was made impossible for you to exist, then it would be impossible for humanity to exist. In the same way, you can think of a universal law, something like gravity. If you change the law of gravity such that things were not attracted to the sun, well, the same law of gravity would ripple out so that things were not attracted to the earth either. Right? So if you change a universal constant in this area of the universe, it affects the entire area of the universe. Now, what's my point? My point is that every single thing is inextricably connected to every other thing through language, through numbers, another language, through space, through time, through the possibility field, through the probability field, through the actual field. And that if you delete one part of the whole, you change the entire whole, potentially deleting the entire whole. And so one cannot love, which is to become one with, to support, to cherish, to facilitate the growth of. One cannot love one person or one thing fully with true understanding without loving all people and all things. One cannot ask for one possibility without allowing and accepting for all possibility. And that is ultimately, if you think of the evolution of God and Goddess, if you think of the evolution of transcendent consciousness and design, you can say that wherever we are, we begin a spiral journey of evolution. We learn to love, to see, to understand more and more of ourself, and then to love, to see, to understand more and more of our family, and then to love, to see, to understand more of our species, more of our planet, more of our solar system, more of our galaxy, and more of our universe. And in order to transcend, in order to move beyond physicality, the universe, our family, we must be willing to accept what is. We must be able to see and understand and love what is and let go of it. If we are attached, you have to change this, that can't happen, no way under the sun can that happen. If we are attached to any single thing in that evolutionary process, if I'm attached that nobody knows this thing about me, if I'm attached that this is completely unforgivable, if I'm attached to this is completely unlovable, that must be cast out of the universe. I cannot accept what is. If I cannot accept what is, I cannot let go of what is. I am attached to it. I want it to be different. If I cannot accept what is, I cannot let go of what is. And so I cannot move beyond what I cannot let go of. And so in the journey of consciousness, we are evolving, right? Our gods and goddesses are projected out into the future. Many hold the idea of unconditional love as an ideal, as something that a deity would embody, a god, a goddess, God, goddess, all that is. And so we're moving in that direction. Right? But a God that loves unconditionally must love everything. You cannot love something and be attached to controlling it. You have to let it be free. So ultimately, we are on a journey towards unconditional love that begins with loving enough to care, caring enough to take time, taking enough time to see, seeing enough to understand, understanding enough to empathize, empathizing enough to attune, attuning enough to facilitate the growth and evolution of ourself, of our partner, of our family, of our community, of our country, of our species, of our planet, of our solar system, to love more and more of what is by understanding it enough to empathize, empathizing enough to attune, mastering attunement enough to succeed at the service, at facilitating, at transcending the self to become part of something more, become some part of something bigger, to move a little bit closer to our current ideas, our current language of deity, of God, goddess, all that is.